Hey guys, Vas here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to my final thoughts / review of the Hobby King Sandstorm. Now I've decided to do this review a little bit differently here because I want to basically just give you my overall opinion on this guy and just let you know of some of the buggy's shortcomings and some of its really good attributes. Now originally I bought this car for my daughter and I wanted to get her something that was a little bit cutesy, that it wasn't too big, it wasn't too much of a handful for her, but yet still had a little bit of zippiness to it and had a certain appeal that she liked. And obviously the Sandstorm delivered in a lot of those aspects. However, there are a couple of negative points for me personally, but there's also a couple of points that are quite a positive for her. And although she didn't really want to do this review with me, I did kind of ask the question. I figured I'll get some feedback from her, and she only really had one negative thing to say about this car, and that was that it was a little bit hard to drive given that it was rear-wheel drive. So given that it's a brushless car, rear-wheel drive, and trying to go on dirt with it, it really spun out a lot. She had a little bit of trouble keeping it in a straight line. But when we took it out on the road, that's when this buggy actually excelled, and she had a lot of fun with it on the road, and still does, as a matter of fact. Now, that's one of, I guess, a bit of a negative point is just the tires on this. They are a very soft compound tire. They grip brilliantly on road, but as you'll see here, they're fairly worn out. The rear tires are fairly worn out. And the problem that I have with this car is because it is a 1/12 scale, not a 1/10 scale, the rear wheels are a little bit smaller than your standard 1/10 scale buggies. So putting 1/10 scale buggy tires on here, because it does have a 12mm hex on the rear, is not going to really help you. It's going to look, well, it will, but it's just going to look a little bit odd. It's going to look a bit big. And then you also have to make sure that you have the right offset, because these are offset quite a bit. So if you don't have the right offset, you're actually going to narrow down the rear width of the car. The other problem is at the front, as you might be able to see here, there's a ball bearing right behind that nut. And again, it kind of limits your options and wheel and tire choice that you can put on this car. Now, Hobby King do stock spare wheels and tires for this particular buggy, so you should be able to get replacements without any problems at all, provided of course they have them in stock. But as far as trying to come up with different wheels and tires that will work on this car, I've sort of struggled a little bit. I haven't really come across anything. That's not to say that there isn't something out there, it's just that I haven't come across it at this time. Now, one of the negatives for me, which was not so much of a negative for her, was that this is the remote that the buggy comes with. Now, my hands are, I've got fairly big hands, they're adult hands, and what I found a lot of the times is that the trigger would actually pinch on my knuckle up here because the handle is so small. So the remote itself actually works pretty well. Has an on and off switch here. You have a release button for your batteries, which just runs on 4 AAAs actually, and then you have a steering dual rate up here. You got a couple of reverse switches, steering trim and throttle trim just here. There's also a third channel button, which is not being used at this time. For her hands, this remote is actually perfect. So for for kids' hands, these remotes are perfect. But for adult hands, this is where I'm not a big fan. I kind of have to move my hand down quite a bit to be able to use the trigger without pinching on my knuckle there. So that's one of the negatives that I have about this remote. But for her, this is actually a positive because she liked it, because it's not as big as some of my other remotes and she found it very easy to steer. So again, that's one of those things that you have to keep in mind depending on who's going to be using this buggy. Now, another thing that I'm not a big fan of is the battery that's being used. Now, there are some positives again, and there are some negatives regarding the battery. The positive is that the battery is not that big. However, I got an extremely long amount of runtime on this thing. I was able to get, I think, 15 to 20 minutes runtime out of this car, and that's actually quite a lot considering the battery is so small. The negative about this battery is that it is so small. It's quite unique, so you can't just run any standard 2S LiPo pack in here. It has to be a specific one that will fit, and even the one that Hobby King recommend is actually a very tight squeeze. Now I've plugged this one in just for this review here. You can see that it's plugged in with the XT60, and it is a very, very snug fit to get it in here. So again, this is something that you'll have to take into account. Now, thankfully, these batteries are not very expensive at all. I think they're somewhere between $10 to $15 from memory. The car does run only on 2S, and believe me, it's plenty fast for what it is. You don't need to run any more power than this. Overall, it is actually pretty well balanced, I have to say, because it does have a mid-mount motor configuration. The buggy is fairly well balanced, even over jumps or just as a general running around. You'll notice that it doesn't really want to wheelie very often because the transmission is actually in here. The motor is actually more inwards. It's tucked away in there. And all the ESC and everything else is kind of hidden behind the driver. You do have to remove some screws to get in there, but because the battery loads from underneath, you don't really need to do anything here unless of course something fails or you want to replace something for whatever reason. That's when you'll need to sort of remove the body, but other than that, the body stays on and you just replace the battery from underneath, as you saw. Steering servo, the electrics, everything about the car works very nicely. Suspension kind of left something to be desired. I sort of have to tune the suspension up a little bit. It's kind of stiff at the moment. It doesn't feel very smooth. It's not very pliable. So definitely could do with some better shocks. But you know, given the price of it, I mean, we're talking, I think it's around about $140, $150 for something like this. It's not that big of a deal. It can be forgiven a little bit. And I suppose to a certain extent, you know, by tuning the suspension up a little bit, you probably will get slightly better grip at the rear and stop the car from bouncing around so much. So that's one thing that I might look into in the near future. We'll see how we go. Durability wise, I have to say the car has withstood a lot of punishment. My daughter is not forgiving on these cars. You know, she's not the best driver out there. And given that it was two-wheel drive, it was definitely a bit of a handful for her, and she tumbled and flipped this thing around and crashed into the fence just running it here in the driveway. It just keeps on ticking. I haven't broken a single component on this car, but it is pretty banged up, it's pretty scratched up, and it's been very, very resilient. So I'm very happy with the durability of it. But as I said, it just has a few points that I think perhaps in future updates or releases, you know, Hobby King might look into perhaps providing different tire options or different wheel options for something of this scale, because it is a little bit tricky to kind of come across and find some of these components out there to be able to upgrade or change to your liking. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. Now, I am going to give you a final score for this car because with all my reviews, I do give you a bit of a final score. So in regards to the electrics, you know, the motor, the ESC steering servo has been fantastic. The speed of the car is actually very impressive as well for the scale that it is, and given that it only runs on 2S. But you know, the only thing is just the battery that kind of lets it down a little bit. I wish they had a more generic style of battery that you can get. That's the only unfortunate thing, but for that reason, I give it a 4 out of 5 because everything else performed or has performed so well. Drivetrain, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I've had no issues with dog bones or bearings or gears, or I've had no problems with this thing. Drivetrain's been totally fine, so that gets a 5 out of 5. Handling, it is going to get a 3 out of 5. You know, it's okay. Tires are pretty grippy, but they do wear out pretty quickly. And of course, the suspension, you know, does need a little bit of tuning, so that you know, loses a couple of points there. Durability, well, as I said, this thing has been performing very well, so it's going to get a 5 out of 5. Haven't broken anything on it. Maintenance, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 purely because I haven't had to do any maintenance on the car. And of course, the things that you do need to tune, such as your shocks, or you know, your camber, your toe angles, or you need to I don't know, adjust something on the car in some way. The extremities are fairly easy to get access to, so you're not going to have an issue there. The only problem that you're going to have is if you need to get into gears and you want to gear it up or gear it down, or you need to do some, you know, replace an ESC or change a steering servo. That's when you need to remove the entire exo cage of the car. So I think for that purpose, or for that reason rather, maintenance is going to get a 4 out of 5. Part support, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I know that this car is actually sold under a different brand as well. If you do some research on the internet, you'll find the same car being sold under a different brand. This is obviously Hobby King's version. And I got no problem with that. I mean, various companies do that with various different cars. You know, Hobby King do stock a lot of parts for this. They do also have some upgrades for it. But the only thing, as I said, is just the tires and tire and wheel options that I wish there were more of them, so that you can obviously customize it more to your terrain or to your driving style or to your conditions in general, just so that you can enjoy the buggy a little bit more. So parts support's going to get a 4 out of 5. Value, I think it offers exceptional value, given that it's so durable, given that I haven't had to spend $1 on it in replacing parts or fixing anything on the car. I think it's been outstanding. So, but again, just wish it had more options for some of the wheels and tires, and I kind of do wish a little bit that it came with a better remote than this one. But aside from that, you know, when you take the price into consideration, you take the performance of the car into consideration, I think value is worthy of a 4 out of 5. So that brings the total score up to 29 out of a potential 35, which equates to an 82.85% out of a total of 100. So about 8 out of 10. I think that's a very good score for this car, and I think it's warranted. I think it does, you know, lose a couple of points here and there. There are a couple of things that you need to watch out for, such as the tires being a little soft, the remote being a little small. So, but again, that really depends on how you use the car and who is going to use it. But that's it. I think I've pretty much wrapped this one up. I'm done with this car for now. My daughter, you know, she drives it in her own spare time. You're probably not going to see this one on the channel again. So that is it for the Hobby King Sandstorm. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully this was helpful to you and you got some information out of it to help you make a decision on whether or not this car is going to be your next RC. If you did like the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up rather. Don't forget to give it a thumbs down as well if you didn't like it. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. And please check out the video description for more information on the buggy, as well as a link to my Facebook page. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will speak to you next time.